Hey, it's Sparky, Fifer, 12:50 a.m. The Fan, beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Just a couple days removed from Christmas Eve as we record this here on Thursday night before the Bucks take on the Orlando Magic at Fifer Forum. And normally we do a post game, so forth. Marzion's got stuff going on. To be quite honest, I don't feel well, so to get this done earlier means I can go to bed earlier. So I'm all about that. Nathan Marzion, your thoughts on how the Bucks, I guess, have looked a little bit here. I went to the game Tuesday night. So we talked about that in the last Green and Growing podcast. Of course, no Wembanyama. That basketball team sucks. I mean, it's one of the worst basketball teams I think I've seen on a court. And I give Popovich a lot of credit because he could very well just sit there and let them play. And he was standing and coaching and teaching and that whole deal the entire game, even though it was over in the first, 6-7 minutes of that game. They were up by like 10-15, and it was pretty much done at that point. But Popovich kept coaching them and kept trying to get the best out of those guys. Give Popovich a lot of credit for that because, again, this team is going nowhere other than the draft lottery and trying to find somebody with Wembanyama. But this Bucks team, like we talked about with the Pistons, where they came out playing hard, even though the Pistons were on that losing streak, they came out playing hard again here against San Antonio. And it never looked like they were going through the motions because they were playing a bad team without Wembanyama. They attacked. They played well. Lillard again from outside, feeling it again in that game. Giannis a triple-double, didn't score a ton, but did other things. Bobby Portis plays well again for the Bucks. So a lot of positives to take out of that game, Nathan.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been a few games in a row now of, okay, they kind of controlled these teams. Now, 2 of the 3 games were against, the 2 worst teams in the league. Yes, right. But you took care of business. You didn't play with your food. You didn't let them, hang around too much. And it was like, okay, like they controlled these games. They got on them from the jump. Dame has started very hot the last 3 games. I think he's had like 12 plus or 15 plus in the first quarter in each of the last 3 games, which is, awesome. And so to see him start in, we know he's playing the whole first quarter now, and that's how he's been doing it for about a month is he plays the whole first and the whole third. And, again, in the first quarters recently, he's been awesome and just kind of getting his groove back. You can tell he's really starting to become Damian Lillard again. And I mean, really, it's been going on for quite a bit now. I mean, again, over the last month, just over a month, he's averaging 28 points, 8 assists, 47% from the field, 42% from 3, 91% from the line. Like those are elite Damian Lillard numbers. I don't expect him to average, 30 plus too much just because, again, he's playing with Giannis now, but to be averaging close to 30, the 3-point shot is back and he just looks awesome. So been very happy with him. And Khris is coming back. Just that offense overall just has been lights out. Like it's been so good. They are just clicking and they're hitting shots. And it seems like the Dame Giannis thing is working better. They're hitting their groove. And they're now averaging 134 points per game in the month of December, which it's now December 21st. So that's 3 weeks of averaging 134 points a game, which is nuts. And again, going, the last month, 129 points a game. Like really since that Magic game where they lost on the road and they were at that point 5-4.
And I think I don't think Lillard played in that game either.
No, he didn't. But that was kind of not the low point, but one of the low points of the, early in the season where people were really freaking out and people were worried and they were like, what is up with this team? Because they were 5-4 and it just was pretty ugly. And, since then, they're number 1 in offensive rating. They're number 12 in defensive rating. They're number 3 in net rating. They're 15-3. They have been rolling since that game. And I just think this is going to get better and better. Now, there's going to be games they struggle. There's going to be games they go cold. And all of a sudden, the offense doesn't look this good and they're not putting up 130 or the defense sucks or whatever. Like there's going to be games. But it's just a matter of, how do they look on a pretty consistent basis? Because before it seemed like they were pretty consistently, good offensively, but not elite and bad defensively. Now it seems like they're elite offensively consistently and, closer to average defensively. We'll see what happens as they play some of these better teams, obviously, but it's good to see them really humming and taking care of business. Because even against bad teams earlier, it wasn't like they were beating up on the bad teams. Like they were struggling with the bad teams. They were, in close games against the Wizards and against, the depleted Bulls and losing to the depleted Bulls. And so it's just good to see them really, stepping on some of these teams and not, looking like an elite team again.
Let's talk a little bit about not only this Bucks team and kind of where they're at right now, but Malik Beasley comes back into that starting lineup. Did you notice a change in how they played with the starting 5 versus having Andre Jackson in there like everybody wants Andre Jackson in there as a starting five. Could you tell any difference?
Not a ton. I mean, neither of them had the ball a ton on the offensive end. And it was more Dame in the first quarter kind of taking over to start. They don't really run the offense a ton differently with Malik Beasley out there compared to Andre Jackson. Now, obviously, I think the spacing is different. And I think, Malik Beasley just commands more attention on the outside. Now, Andre Jackson is hitting his shots still, which is,
it's amazing.
I don't know how it's if you told me what his 3-point percentage would be, and I don't know how many he shot, but I think he shot about 20. And it's like, if you told me, okay, he's going to have 20 attempts on December 21st, what do you think his percentage will be? I would have put a ton of money that it was below 30%, and it's at 40. It's 47%. And so it's unbelievable, but I don't know if it'll keep up. And if it does, that's awesome. But I'm still kind of waiting for it to him to kind of hit that wall. And all of a sudden he has a stretch where he's like 1 for 13, 1 for 15, and it comes back down to earth here. But I didn't notice much differently. Again, they started well in both games. I think we talked about this last time, but I think Andre Jackson is best off the bench where the defense has been hurting more. The offense, the starting lineup with Beasley has been fine defensively. Like, they've been pretty good defensively. When you look at their defensive rating, when you look at just overall their minutes this season, they have been good on both ends of the court. So I don't necessarily think right now we'll see, again, I don't mind them testing stuff out. I don't mind them changing stuff at some point. I'm not saying we have to stick with Beasley the entire rest of the season, but for right now, I'm like, it's working. They're really playing well together. I don't think they need a ton of help on the defensive end right now with that starting lineup. So it's like, play it out, see what's happening. But I'd rather have Andre Jackson coming off the bench where, you've had those campaign Bobby Portis lineups that have been really bad defensively, and you can put him in there to help with those rather than putting him in the starting lineup where the defense has already been solid.
So let's talk about the guy that hasn't played because he's been hurt, and he's coming back next month by all indications. And that's Jay Crowder. And that's going to be a guy that's going to come off of the bench. So how does he fit into this, and whose minutes are costed essentially by Jay Crowder coming back at some point next month? Because you would have to assume once he's back and healthy, maybe not immediately, maybe they'll have him on a pitch count or whatever, but at some point here, you would assume he's going to be somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes a night, I would think, as they head to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it'll be a combination. I don't know if it'll be like, oh, this one person, Jay Crowder's getting all of his minutes. I think Marzion will play a little bit less, Pat will play a little bit less, Beasley will play a little bit less just because they'll probably, before they were going with Crowder at the closing lineup. So I think putting Crowder at the closing lineup, instead of Beasley will just reduce Beasley's minutes a little bit more. And, and again, there'll be times where, okay, maybe Brook is in a matchup where he's not really playing well, or he can't play in this matchup. So you go Crowder and Beasley, or you go Crowder and Marzion, whoever. But they got the options, but I just think most of the time it would probably be Crowder in for Beasley in that scenario. So it'll be multiple guys. It'll be, and they're gonna. At least I want to see them give all these guys minutes. It's the regular season. You don't have to have all your rotations nailed down right now. Give them minutes so that you can nail down your rotation later. You see what you have in everyone. That was one of the knocks on Bud, is like guys like Andre Jackson or Marzion Beauchamp. He wouldn't give them many minutes at all. And then you're sitting there going, well, you're never going to play them in the playoffs, obviously, because you didn't even give them a chance in the regular season. So you don't even know what you have. At least now, what you see what you're getting in Andre Jackson. You can play him a little bit more, see if his shot continues to look good, see if his defense continues to look good. Marzion, see if he can get into a groove consistently. Pat, Jay Crowder, all those guys. Like, you just got to play them a lot in the regular season, or play them, kind of as much as you can, and see what you have in them so that you can make better decisions later, and what you have in all these guys, and who you might need to get in a trade, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it can't hurt to play these guys.
All right, take a quick time out. On the other side, something we were going to get to last podcast, never did, and that's Khris Middleton's role kind of for this team in clutch situations at the end of games and a half, whatever you want to determine as clutch in your mind as a Bucks fan. His role in it. In fact, Giannis just talked about Middleton and his role within this team the other day. Read some quotes from Giannis about Middleton. So we'll do that coming up next. Don't forget, download Green and Growing on your Odyssey app, or if you download your favorite podcast app. Check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page as well. Like, subscribe, hit that bell to get your notifications, do all that fun stuff, and we'll be back after this. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 AM, The Fan, along with my guy Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. Follow me at Sparky Radio. We're going to talk a little bit about this Bucks basketball team in closing situations, end of game situations. And I'm going to start. Listen, I understand that everybody's going to, well, not everybody, but people are going to say, well, it doesn't have to be Lillard with the ball in his hands at the end of games. I disagree. Yes, I want Lillard to have the ball in his hands at end of game situations 5 out of 5 times. With all due respect to Giannis and Middleton, everybody else, let Lillard create and dish it to whoever is open at that point, or let him take his own shot and be that guy. He is your best clutch player. He's shown it over the course of his career. Has cash money shown that he can be clutch too? Absolutely he has, but he's not Damian Lillard. And that's where this kind of changes at the end of the day. I'm not saying Middleton can't take a shot. All I'm saying is Middleton or Lillard is going to be the one that initiates the offense. So if they're going to want to pick and roll with him and Middleton, fine. But Lillard initiates the offense. I don't want Lillard sitting in a corner waiting for Middleton to do something and waiting for the pass. I'd prefer not to do that. I'd prefer to have Lillard be the guy that operates, with the ball in hand and let him make the decision of where the ball goes at that point. What say you, Nathan Marzion?
Yeah, obviously, I want Lillard to be the main guy doing that, initiating the offense. Now, I'm not saying that he has to do it 5 out of 5 times and it has to be every time. I am more, and we've talked about this several times, but I'm more of the, I'm fine with Khris taking some possessions. I'm fine with if they want to use Dame a little bit more off ball, and it seems like they do. It seems like it's a strategy to okay, let's let Khris take some possessions to. It's harder to generate a defense against a guy when they're off ball compared to when they're on ball. When they're on ball, it's like, okay, you can kind of quickly get it out of their hands. Whereas if you have Khris bring it up and Dame's off the ball, it's a little bit easier to get the defense off balance and then get it to Dame and have him get better looks and keep, have the ball in his hands later in the possession. Same with Giannis. It's like,
let me ask you a question real quick. Do you think they're putting Middleton in these situations because Griffin thought it was a good idea in the offseason? Or do you think they're doing this because Middleton asked to be put more in this situation throughout certain points of the game?
I don't think there's a single chance that Khris was advocating for giving him the ball. I think it could be a combination of all of them agreeing to this and saying, hey, let's try this out. Dame, and it might be Dame saying, I want to be a little bit more off ball. He seems to like being off ball a little bit. It doesn't seem like this is Khris Middleton taking possessions and Dame's upset about it. It's like they have some type of plan that get it to Khris and Dame, they're trying to get the ball to Dame. It's not like they're ignoring Dame. They just are doing it later in the possession rather than giving it to Dame to start. Now, again, I'm not saying I always agree with that. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it all the time, but I get why they do it sometimes. I get why they want to change it up a little bit sometimes and not just do, Dame, you take the ball up and then they're going to just get it out of his hands right away. It's like, again, use Giannis and Dame both off ball where they're, it's harder to generate a defense against them and you can get them the ball later in the possession rather than them having to pass the ball right away and then someone else has the ball. It's like, and again, it's the same with what Giannis used to have where he would always be the one bringing the ball up and, he can be a playmaker. He can bring the ball up. He can do that, but it was that's not the best way to use him. The best way to take advantage of his scoring is to use him off ball where you can't generate a defense to just make him get rid of the ball right away. They just would build a wall and all of a sudden, okay, Giannis can't do anything. Boom. I gotta get rid of it. And someone else is then having to make a play. And it's no, start with someone else, get Giannis the ball later in a more advantageous position, and then he can go to work. And that might be a little bit of what they're doing with Dame. Now, again, they're obviously different players. I know Dame, you're not going to build a wall against him. It's not the same type of defense, but they would easily trap him. They'd easily double him if he brought the ball up. And I think the Bucks are just trying to have a little bit of a counter for that. And instead of just doing the same thing over and over again, let's have some variety. Let's, and people hate on Khris as a ball handler. I get he has some ugly turnovers. I get he's not the most reliable ball handler, and Dame is a much more reliable ball handler. But Khris can handle the ball. This isn't some guy that he's never been a playmaker in his life, and he's doing something he's not supposed to be doing. Khris can play make. Khris is a 5-6 assist a game guy who did this all throughout the 2021 playoff run down the stretch of games. It was him bringing the ball up. It was Giannis off the ball. I just don't understand the complete hatred of why is Khris Middleton ever taking the ball up? And it's he can do it a few times. Like Khris can handle the ball. And again, I'm not saying he's never going to have turnovers and he's never going to make dumb mistakes, but like he can handle the ball. I mean, it's okay. He's a good ball handler.
Yeah, I agree with you. As far as him being a good ball handler, sometimes he makes that pass and everybody scratches their heads like, dude, why?
I want to ask you,
Lillard does the exact same damn thing.
Yeah, I want to ask though, like overall, Khris is a good ball handler. That doesn't mean he can't have really ugly moments, but I don't think he's consistently turning the ball over. I don't think he's consistently making a ton of mistakes. It's just that when he does, yeah, they're pretty ugly. When he does, like he'll have a couple times a game where it's just he loses the ball, whatever. But like if he handled the ball, 50 times and the ball gets taken 3 or 4 times, it's like that doesn't mean he's a terrible ball handler. That means okay, he got the ball taken a few times. He had some ugly turnovers, but like he can still handle the ball most of the time. When you look at the grand scheme of things, like I trust him on 80% of possessions that he's gonna, make a nice play or make a good read or get the ball to Giannis or Dame and make a play. It's like there's gonna be times where he turns the ball over. It doesn't make him a bad ball handler.
Let me ask you this: we talk about Middleton in that situation at the end of games, and I've said I want Lillard, but as of right now, as we sit here in December, coming up on Christmas, he definitely has better chemistry with the other guys. Right? You're seeing him throw the ball towards rim for Brook Lopez, throw the ball towards rim for Giannis. Anticipation passes, where we see that from Middleton, not as much with Damian Lillard as he's still trying to figure out, these guys and how to play with these guys. So I think right now Middleton probably is working better in some of these situations because of the chemistry that he has. The question is whether or not once we get towards the end of the year, will Lillard be able to have that same type of chemistry with his teammates?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I agree, but I see it progressing. I see it getting better. With Dame and Khris, with Dame and Giannis, with whoever. And Dame's had kind of good pick and roll with Brook all season. Like that's been kind of a thing they can go to, which is nice. But I obviously Khris has really good chemistry with Giannis, better than he does with like Dame, and that helps. But it's something that's it's a work in progress. And again, I see it getting better. I see Khris making the extra pass to Dame, Giannis making the extra pass to Dame a little bit more than they did at the start of the season, where like they realize, oh yeah, we have Damian Lillard on our team. Like instead of that being Grayson Allen or whoever, that's Damian Lillard. Like I can give him the ball. So that type of stuff I'm seeing more. And yeah, just again, figuring out how they all fit together, how they're all going to make this work, the dynamics of the whole thing and who they want to go to late. It's going to take some time and it's getting better. It's been still fine. Like the results have been good. They're still the second right now best clutch team in the league. So it's not like they've been bad in the clutch or anything. But I think they're also just some of this too. Like I don't know that what they're doing all the time is what they plan on doing the rest of the season. Like just because they're going to Khris doesn't mean they have this set plan of we're going to Khris in the clutch. Like they might just say, hey, let's try this out for a little bit. Like let's do a couple of weeks of like, let's try to go Khris ball handler in the clutch, see how that works, see how you guys like that. And that way you have some experience with it. Like if Khris is handling the ball late in the playoffs, you're not like, oh crap, we didn't do this. We always have just been programmed to get it to Dame, get it to Dame, get it to Dame. It's like have some reps doing other stuff. Now, again, I think everyone kind of agrees, and I'm sure the Bucks will end up doing this, that 80% of possessions in the clutch, like you want to get it to Dame. You want to at least, and it's like just focus on getting it to Dame mainly. But it doesn't have to be the only thing that they do. And to have some experience doing other things, it can only be beneficial. So I think we have to just also look at it that way of, they might just be trying some stuff out.
All right, take a quick time out. On the other side, I want to come back and talk about this race for MVP. A lot of Joel Embiid love going on right now. Does Giannis have a real chance at winning another MVP this year? Or do we think this is already put away regardless of what happens with Giannis? We'll talk about that coming up next here on Green and Growing. Steve Sparky Fifer. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. Follow Nathan Marzion at Nathan Marzion. And we will not talk about the latest Marquette loss. We will not bring that up in this podcast because it doesn't serve any purpose of keeping Nathan Marzion's head in the game. So we will not bring that up. Back after this. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 AM The Fan, along with Nathan Marzion at Nathan Marzion on Twitter. It is Green and Growing, another fine edition. We're going to talk about the MVP race, the NBA MVP race, as far as does Giannis still have a chance at this thing? Now, this sounds stupid because it's December, So you're like, what are you talking about? There's a long way to go. It's true. But Embiid is playing at such a high level right now. There is no Harden to take shots from him. Maxi's getting shots, but not enough to kind of hurt him. In my opinion, he's got a much better coach now than he did before in Nick Nurse, that's putting him in better situations than, say, Doc. So I like what they've done with Embiid to this point. And if you go to NBA.com, they have this MVP ladder, whatever the case may be. Embiid is 1. He's averaging almost 34 points a game, 11.5 rebounds, 6.5 assists. On Wednesday night, he had a 41-point double-double, scoring 19 of those 41 points in the opening frame. It didn't even play in the fourth quarter. Jokic is second, averaging 27 and 12.5 rebounds and 9 assists per game. And then Giannis, who was at 5, has now moved up to 3 on this MVP ladder on NBA.com. He's averaging 32, just short of 11 rebounds and only 5 assists per game to this point, which I shouldn't say only. That's still pretty good for a big guy like Giannis to average 5. I personally just have this feeling that Giannis isn't winning this thing. I mean, unless Embiid or Jokic get hurt, I don't see how he wins this, because Lillard is going to consistently put up around 30 points a night, 25 to 30 points a night. You're not going to get that from Jamal Murray. Probably not going to get that from Maxey. So because of that, he's not going to be viewed probably the same way as he was when it was Middleton and Holiday with him. Now that he's got a true superstar with him in Damian Lillard. So I would say he's not winning it, and this race is probably already done regardless of what he does going forward, even though, again, we're just coming up on Christmas here in December. Nathan Marzion, I ask you, does Giannis have a real chance, in your opinion, at NBA MVP?
He definitely has a real chance. Now, if it's ending today, it's Embiid. Embiid's number 1 right now. But I think for sure, if the Bucks are 1 or 2 in the East and Giannis is putting up, over 30 a game, 11 rebounds, 5-6 assists, and his efficiency is as good as it has been. I mean, that's the one thing, is he's shooting 61% from the field, which typically he's around 55. And so that's shot up to 61. There's definitely a case for him to be the MVP, and it would take Embiid, falling off a little bit, his stats not being quite as good, and maybe the Sixers being the 4 seed or something for him to fall a little bit out of the race. I mean, I get annoyed because it's like we kind of all told ourselves in the playoffs, like, okay, don't give Embiid the MVP again, because like we know he's good in the regular season, but he's got to show it in the playoffs. And then we get into the regular season, and everyone just kind of forgets that. And it's like, oh, give Embiid the MVP. Like, I'm not saying he's not deserving of it. It's a regular season award, all that stuff. But we've seen with other players, we've seen with Giannis and Jokic, they win 1 or they win 2, and they fail in the playoffs a couple times in a row. And it's like, we can't give them the MVP again. And then they just are disregarded from the conversation the next year. And it's like, we're not really doing that with Embiid. We're not really, like, it just all of a sudden goes back to, no, he's the MVP. Look at his numbers, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, the dude was putting up monster numbers last year. The dude was having these games where, everyone was like, he's unstoppable. Nobody's stopping him. And it's like, he gets to the playoffs and stinks it up. And I'm just like, I'm tired of, I'm not saying that will happen for sure again, but before we give this guy more awards, like, let's make him prove it in the playoffs before we start doing that. Now, again, if he keeps up this level, fine. He's playing at a high enough level that it's like he can justify it. But if this comes down to, Giannis has super close stats to Embiid, his efficiency is better, he's on the better team, then I'm like, why would they, we should not be giving it to Embiid, the guy who hasn't proven anything in the playoffs yet, just because he has slightly better stats, if that's the case at the end of the year. So I definitely think Giannis has a chance. I think, if the Bucks keep rolling and like they are really, really humming at the end of the year and everything, I think as long as Giannis keeps putting up, big performances, like he's gonna have a chance. He's gonna be in the top 3 as he always is, and he doesn't have that voter fatigue against him as he has the last few years. So that's a good thing. And I think there's a chance.
Let's talk about Giannis's assist numbers. He's trailing in assist numbers to obviously Jokic, not even close. And Embiid has him by over an assist per game. What type of assist numbers do you think he's going to have by the end of the year? Right now, he's averaging 5. Can he get to 7? Is that possible? Do you think Giannis could get to 7 assists by the end of the year? Because if he gets to 7 assists and Embiid is still around 6 or so, then he beats him there. Points could be close. We'll see about rebounds and kind of where that leads to at this point. But maybe it's assists up to about 7 or so. I think that really helps.
Yeah, and with the updated numbers, I mean, Embiid only has them by 0.5 because they each played. Giannis had 16 assists the other night, and Embiid had 3 the other night. I mean, Embiid scored 50, so it wasn't like a knock on Embiid. But Embiid right now is averaging 5.9. Giannis is at 5.4 after those 2 games. And Giannis is, since the first 8 or so games where he was really kind of struggling to get acclimated into the offense, and there were games where Dame was missing and his assist numbers were down, his turnover numbers were up, his scoring numbers and efficiency numbers weren't the same. But since that start, he's at 6.3 assists per game. So like I fully expect him to get back up to like 6 a game. I think that that's where he typically is, and that's where he'll get back to, and he already is getting back to there. But it's like I mean, I just don't think he started out as well as, and that's what typically happens with Giannis. It's like he has a week or 2 to start where his numbers are just a little bit worse. His numbers are a little bit down, but he always gets back up to his averages. And I mean, we're already seeing that happen, and I expect him to be back up to like 6.1 or 6.2 or whatever at the end of the year.
How big of a deal is the standings at the end of the year? If the Bucks are the far and away number 1 seed at the end of the year, with Boston and Philadelphia behind them, does that help Giannis get over the hump and win it? Because right now Boston's the 1, Bucks are 2, Philly is the 3 as we sit here today recording this here on Thursday before Bucks and Magic.
Yeah, the standings matter for sure. If Philly ends up 1 or something, or Philly ends up above Milwaukee, then yeah, like Embiid would probably get it above Giannis, because we know Giannis has the better supporting cast talent-wise. So it's like if the Sixers end up higher in the standings, okay, that's a reason to give Embiid the MVP. If the Bucks are far better than the Sixers at the end of the year, then yeah, like that's a reason to not give Embiid the MVP and to give it to Giannis. And right now the Nuggets are a little bit behind. They haven't been great, so that's a reason to not give it to Jokic. It's just like that stuff does definitely come into play. Like people don't like when the MVP is on the 6 seed or the 5 seed or like a team that really wasn't that dominant. It's like, no, like that's, part of the reason we're giving it to you is because you are the most valuable. You're contributing to your team winning. So that is a factor.
So what about Ja Morant? What if they come back and make the playoffs because they're trash, and Ja comes back and hits the game winner right off the bat? Because they were horrible without Ja Morant. And I don't know if anybody in Memphis thought they were going to be that bad without Ja Morant, because they thought they had some good players around him like Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson and those guys that would be able to pick up the slack and score. And that simply was not the case at the end of the day. So if Memphis ends up, I don't know, they're way under 500 right now. So let's say they end up a top 4 seed by the end of the day. Does Ja Morant somehow, after being suspended at the beginning of the year, end up getting the MVP?
No, I mean, I think that would be like that type of stuff is, I think you're putting too much weight on just like the record when they play and the record with them in. Because we know Giannis, Jokic, Embiid, again, this is assuming Ja Morant doesn't average 30 and 10 and 5 like they do. If he does, then okay, yeah, he would have a valid argument. But it's like if he's going to average his typical 25, 27 or whatever he averages, like, no, he's not the MVP over guys averaging 32 and 12 and 6. Like he's just not. I don't care what the record is with him on or off. I think that stuff, the record stuff, comes into play more when you have multiple guys putting up those numbers, and it's more of like a tiebreaker. It's more of a, okay, like that's something that could differentiate these guys. But I'm not gonna take a 25 point per game guy and say, well, look at their record when he plays, he's the MVP. Like, no, these guys are clearly playing better and putting up bigger numbers. So they all of a sudden go into a league of their own, in my opinion.
All right, let's wrap this bad boy up here as we get ready for Bucks and Magic tonight. A shout out to Bart Winkler, our morning show host on 1250. Landed a national radio gig on CBS Sports Radio from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. On CBS Sports Radio. Also could be heard at 1250 a.m. That starts on January 2nd. So if you are a Bart Winkler show fan, then you will definitely want to hear that. Him being a national guy. Marzion, I've been around a long time because I'm really old. I don't know if I know another Milwaukee guy based in Milwaukee that's ever held a national radio position while living in Milwaukee. I don't think I can come up with one of a radio host here locally that ended up hosting a national show. Most of these guys are East Coast guys, West Coast guys, or from like Atlanta or Miami. That's normally what this ends up being. Never do I remember hearing, again, a weekday, Monday through Friday guy being from Milwaukee. Like that, to me, that's pretty crazy where, he's going to talk Packers. He's going to talk Brewers and Bucks from time to time. on there. He'll probably get some interviews with some of those guys from those teams. That's a pretty cool deal.
Yeah, no, that's very cool, and I saw that as well. So, I've interacted with him a few times on Twitter and everything, and so yeah, I mean that's definitely really cool for him. Happy for him, and as you said, for someone in Milwaukee in a smaller market type of thing to be doing that is really cool.
Yep, he is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. Follow me at Sparky Radio. It's another edition of Green and Growing. Download it on your Odyssey app, wherever you download your favorite podcast at. Like, subscribe, hit that bell on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page to get notifications when we are doing these things. Thank you so much. One last thing, Marzion, are you buying stuff at this age for Christmas for people, or are you still in the free and clear, not really having to buy anything for anybody at this point?
I buy a few things like for my mom and dad and stuff, but nothing.
Nice.
I mean, it's nothing crazy, and I don't really ask for much, so it kind of evens out. Like I feel like if I don't ask for much, then I don't have to buy much.
You told me in the past you don't ask for anything because you want playoff tickets, so you just rather just wait and get that playoff.
Yeah, but there's a chance I get nothing. So and it's finals tickets. Like I wait for the finals. So I'm like, if they don't make the finals, I'll get nothing. And that's fine. Which is there's an 80% chance they don't make the finals.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I mean, I'll take the 80% chance at getting nothing, but if that 20% hits, I want tickets.
That's awesome. He is Nathan Marzion. You can follow him on Twitter, Nathan Marzion. Follow me at Sparky Radio. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good holidays over the weekend. We'll be back next week.